I'd like to call to order the regular Town Commission meeting of April the 23rd. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tom Peck,
Here.
Vice Mayor Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Here.
Commissioner Burrell.
Here.
Okay, first item on the agenda tonight is an Historic Preservation Month proclamation. The town clerk, please read the proclamation into the record.
Whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character. Whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages and all walks of life and all ethnical backgrounds. Whereas historic preservation plays an important role in our lives, and we should celebrate the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping us to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as a people. The Martin County Historic Preservation Board has planned events throughout Martin County during the month of May to increase awareness and the need for public participation in historic preservation in order to save our local treasures. And whereas this year's Historic Preservation Month recognizes local historian and author Sandra Thurlow, who is well known for historic preservation work. Now therefore, the Town Commission of the Town of Sewell's Point recognizes the month of May as Historic Preservation Month in Sewell's Point and recognizes local historian and author Sandra Thurlow for her immeasurable contribution of preserving the town's history.
I'm trying to get to you with the proclamation.
I just want to say thank you. When April called me, I had no idea my name was going to be on the proclamation, so that's an honor. And I'm just so glad I live somewhere where there is so much history. Can you imagine? I've been mining it for 35 years, so we do live in a very special place, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, once again, Historic Preservation Board, Martin County, thanks to you guys for the recognition. One thing I do want you guys to put on your calendars, next year, 2025, is the centennial for Martin County, so it's 100 years.
Wow.
So make sure you have it on your calendar. We'll be trying to do quite a bit throughout the county.
So we're going to do dancing in here, or?
Put it on. All right. I appreciate you guys.
Great, thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is National Volunteer Month proclamation. Town clerk, please read the proclamation into the record.
Whereas April is National Volunteer Month, a month dedicated to recognizing the importance of volunteering and honoring the significant contributions volunteers make by generously donating their time and talents to worthy causes. Whereas Volunteer Month is also an opportunity to recognize and thank the volunteers who lend their time, talent, and voice and resources to meet the critical needs of our community. Whereas volunteering brings people together, uniting us around our common belief in the dignity and equality of every person and giving us a chance to learn from others we might not have otherwise met. Whereas the town of Sewell's Point has an outstanding group of resident volunteers who give willingly of their time to meet the needs of our citizens. Whereas the town of Sewell's Point recognizes those who serve our community as volunteering and civic engagement in the cornerstone of a strong town. Now therefore, the Town Commission of the town of Sewell's Point hereby recognizes the month of April as National Volunteer Month in Sewell's Point and thanks every resident for their service to the town.
Thank you. Mr. Daniels, like to add something?
Yes, obviously, we have a small group here at Town Hall, and we couldn't do hardly anything if we didn't have the services of our residents that volunteer, help the police department, the chief, and the town hall with a lot of the events, and obviously we have our Arbor Day event coming up too at the on Saturday, which I'll speak more about, but it's just very important. So as we progress through next year, especially with us having the 100th anniversary of our county, I do want to make sure that we take the time out to recognize those individuals that give their time, treasure, and talents to our residents that are here. And being residents themselves, you know, it's really the blood, sweat, and tears that they make this community what we have. So I just want to thank everybody that is listening for their hard work.
Thank you. Next up is public comments. I have no cards, but I do have a couple of words. Last meeting, we got a little tangled up in our spurs at the the public comment section. I wanted to clarify a couple of points. Everyone needs to fill out a comment card. For non-agenda items, we'll discuss those during section 3 of the meeting, which is the section we're talking about right now. For public comments on agenda items, they will be addressed after the item is introduced. Once the item is presented, no further public comments will be accepted. The purpose of these items is a presentation of the issue to the commissioners, not a public forum or workshop. If the issue is complex or in its initial phase, obviously we'll go ahead and schedule a workshop sometime in the future so you can handle more public comments. And one other thing, last time, somebody gave up their time to the speaker after them. We shouldn't be doing that, and I should have said no. So, you've got 3 minutes, but nobody else gets more than 3 minutes. Is there any questions or? Okay. Any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Vice Mayor Fender.
I just want to ask for the protocol on consent agenda regarding financial items. I notice there's none in this one, and maybe there's not. What's our cadence on finance?
Usually it's every month, we have a monthly report. When we have the auditors coming in, sometimes, that gets delayed a little bit, and, they're currently doing the preliminary work for our audit. So, but generally, it's every month, and I think it's usually the second meeting of the month. And I think we heard them at the last meeting, if I'm not mistaken, so.
Yeah, I asked Mariah, and March was at the last meeting. So we had February and March at the last meeting.
Okay.
So-
I
so-
just recall in the good old days, my memory failed, but it seemed like I always had them, but
It was always supposed to be the second meeting in the month, correct?
Right.
okay.
And so then it was last.
Thanks for that. I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Well, I think we're just approving the agenda first.
Oh, agenda, I'm sorry. I thought we were,
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
so move.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck.
Yes, and now we're up to the consent agenda.
I'll move to accept.
I just have one question. On the consent agenda in there is building permits. I see 2 new permits we're taking out. I was just curious where they're at, the 2 new building permits that are listed.
You want to pull them out to talk later?
I was just curious on that because I didn't know that there were 2 new homes being built. That, where it says building permits for new homes, I thought. Going on.
If you mean the note at the bottom?
Yeah, let me see, I gotta go to that on
We have
I think
one-
for March, there were two. In the green on the permits issued under new house for March, the little graph shows two.
Yes, exactly, yeah, I didn't realize that there were two new homes that were pulled, I was just curious on that, because I haven't seen anything in a while.
Well, we had a couple that were ready to be issued, and they were delayed, but what was happening is they came in, and that's why we had that, we called it out at the bottom, just to show you that we do have some that were coming in, and they were issued, two were issued. I don't know.
That's
I don't know.
140 North Sewell's Point
Yeah.
Road
And
and 118 North Sewell's Point Road.
That's all, thank you.
Oh, okay, I didn't
That's
know-
all, that's all I was just curious, I didn't realize that those were the two.
Yeah, we were just trying to show you that they were there, they just
Okay.
weren't issued, so it was like, in the process when this was being done, so I wanted to show that, hey, we do have it, and that income is there, it's just a matter of the timing.
Okay, I thought they were just brand new, they were just putting the permits in now.
No, they were waiting, and then we were waiting for the issuance of the new regulations that we have for the water retention, on-site water retention, so it kind of delayed it a little bit, that's why that was like that.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it. I'm good now, I'll make a second to the consent agenda.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Fender?
Yes.
Okay, we don't have any ordinances, first or second reading, no resolutions. So that brings us down to item 10, old business, referendum ballot language. Would the town attorney like to introduce this item, please?
So this is the draft version of the actual language that would go on the referendum ballot to reflect the charter changes that the commission recommended earlier. This is not the actual amendment, to the text, which is a longer document, but this is the draft for your review and discussion and hopefully approval or changes to the actual ballot language. There's very strict rules about the ballot language. It has to be no more than 65 words for each topic, including the caption, and the caption has to describe the action. So what we're seeking tonight is approval of the language with or without any amendments, changes that the commission would like to make.
And let's assume that these items are adopted. Do you go back and actually mark up the charter and then send that to us for our approval? Since this isn't exactly the wording that'll be in the charter. How does that work?
That would also be done separately as the actual, when the commission, assuming that the ballot measures are approved, that the referenda are approved, then the commission would actually approve the text changes to the charter. So we can draft that up before the referendum if you'd like to see that as well.
Vice Mayor Fender.
Just ask for clarification. I thought I saw an email from one of the committee members saying that the way we depicted town planning board presentation was not as they recommended. Is that true or false?
Half true.
Okay.
Was discussion over the planning board that's in the charter currently. We haven't used it. It says that we should have one. And the problem that you run into is if you had an issue later on where, say, you had a development come in and this commission took action and they didn't, it wasn't to the favor of the developer, say. For argument's sake, let's say somebody came in and wanted to do a development plan for Harbor Bay Plaza. And, they came here because we don't have a planning board. So there'd be a recommendation that you'd probably hear from staff and from the planner, but, obviously, if it's detrimental to our community, then we're probably not going to be recommending something. And so say we didn't recommend it and you all denied the request for the development, then they could have action in the courts because we didn't follow our own charter. So the discussion was that in what they can do, similar to what you do with the Charter Review Board or committee, is you can have an ad hoc committee or board, whichever you want to choose to name it, and you could have a planning board. So if you know you have this issue, you can set it up that way. You can even put that in by ordinance. But if you have it in the charter and you don't utilize it, there's a possibility that could leave you open for litigation. So when we had the discussion, I didn't talk about the litigation factor at their meeting, but I did explain to them that, they could always do this by setting up an ad hoc committee. And we have those from time to time, and it's just as easy. But I don't think I took the time to mention it in the first meeting when we discussed this. I did talk about it a little bit at the meeting afterwards, and it wasn't this, treat the issue as not being relevant, but ultimately, you need to make the change on whether you have an ad hoc committee or not, you have to make the change on the charter.
Understood. So just the last sentence there says the town commission proposes that the provision for a town planning board be deleted from the charter. That's a recommendation of the commission and the staff, not necessarily coming from the committee that,
Correct.
okay, all right.
You're going to need a planning committee, but it'd be more ad hoc, and that's kind of what we talked about when we were at the committee meeting. And I know Dr. Farrell was there. If I'm misstating it, please correct me. Thank you.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, just upon, I read it, but I haven't thought about it intensely, but I think it all sounds good. I'm not a lawyer is what I'm saying, but when I look at it, it all sounds good and it makes sense. And this is probably something that I should have asked at the other meeting, but for forfeiture of office, the unexcused absences from 3 consecutive regular meetings, I'm not saying that's not a good, I don't think we've ever had an issue with attendance. I'm not saying that's not a good number, but was that just kind of what the committee decided was too many in a row? There have been some months where we've had like 3 meetings or when we had a lot going on, and I'm not saying that I support any commissioner missing 3 meetings in a row, but was there any?
This is patterned off of an ordinance that they looked at, or a charter amendment that the committee looked at from, I believe it was St. Augustine or St. Augustine Beach. And in that provision, it also talked about, having an excused absence.
Yeah, who's the excuser? Is that you?
Well, no, it would be it would be you all.
Okay.
But,
Well-
obviously in the days of COVID, and I actually, when I was at another jurisdiction, I had a commissioner that was out for a long time with COVID. And when he was able to attend via Zoom, he was, but, we thought we were going to lose him. And so, some of the residents were upset that he wasn't there in person, but the commission kept excusing him.
Okay,
And
so it's the commission's, the excuse.
commission's
Okay.
views, right.
Okay,
The communication would probably come forward from me because they can't communicate directly with you. So, it would probably come to me, and then I'd relay it to the commission at the beginning of a meeting.
okay.
It's usually something that's just added to the consent agenda as a real quick item.
And
No, I'm serious. That's-
yeah, and the procedure, there's a process that is spelled out in the example that was looked at from St. Augustine Beach or wherever it was. That's something that couldn't go into the
Right.
ballot question because it would take
Okay.
too many words.
Okay.
But you'll see it when it actually
Okay, all right,
comes to
that sounds
the-
good. I just want to know, that sounds like a good procedure. I just didn't.
Did you have any further?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Susan, if you can walk the commission through what happens after this point. Say, I don't know how the commission's going to vote, but say they decide, okay, this is good. What's the next step? Doesn't it have to go to the supervisor of elections for their review, legal review and approval?
Yes, that would be basically the next step, is that it goes to the supervisor of elections in order to get placed on the ballot for the general election, I think is the.
Yes, in
what we
November.
decided on. And then once it's once the referenda are either approved or disapproved, then it would come back to the commission to make the changes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further input or discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the ballot language?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
The clerk?
My name is Stephen Polachek, and I'm at 92 North Sewell's Point Road. My concern with the language is 1 year. I think anybody that's moving here and wants to run for, within 1 year is kind of moving here to run. So I just think that 1 year is way too short a period. That's just my thought.
Okay, was there
I'll second.
a second? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Mayor Tom Peck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman.
Yes.
Mayor, can
Commissioner Mayfield?
I just wanted to add that, I wanted to clarify too, that before there was no time constraint on qualified voter, it was just qualified voter. So at least we're improving in that regard.
Do we have the ability to modify after this point?
Let's see.
5 years, maybe.
Well, my question is, if you said you wanted to do 5 years, do we still have the capability of modifying after?
The charter you're talking about.
Well, this vote on this, the wording on
We
this.
can do a motion to reconsider the vote that you just took, and, since you are on the prevailing side, so you'd be allowed to make that motion to reconsider. If you got a second, then you vote on it, and if the commission agrees with you, then it opens back up, so you can discuss it further.
But we have to do it at this meeting, is my question.
Well, no, you can do it the next meeting, too.
Do we have time?
Sure.
Okay, so we could noodle on
Well,
until next meeting on the.
I'm not
10th?
sure what deadlines you have to get this to the supervisor of elections.
I'm sorry, but sitting
I-
here right now, I don't know.
I think Glenn knows that, but, if we run into an issue, we can, and you feel that we need to bring it up, we can always
Well,
see
the
if the
point is
commission.
valid on the
can meet.
1 year, so we should at least think about that, We haven't had much time to think about that, just given the point.
I think it's one meeting after you can reconsider.
Yes, I think you're right, yeah.
One meeting, you're allowed to reconsider at the next meeting.
So
If
I
there's
think,
time.
I think we'll have enough time,
Okay.
so, because it's got to go to the supervisor of elections. So I don't think the fact of it's 1 year or whatever amount of time you want to put in there is going to matter to them. They're looking at more the
Yeah.
number of words you have in it and to see that it matches.
Well, to Kai's point, 1 year's better than no years, and to our friend's point, 1 year may be too short. We should think about it.
Sounds good.
Okay, that brings us to item 11, new business, stormwater management and stormwater utility. Mr. Daniels?
Yes. Again, this is a policy decision that, was spoken about at the strategic planning session that we had with Dr. Delaney, and also our budget process that we had last year. So we're just, as you know, we're getting close to addressing our budget with the capital improvement projects coming up in our next meeting. And so I just wanted to give some background to the commission on, the purpose and the whole background for, stormwater fees or, assessments, And when you have a community that sits on the water, whether it's the ocean or whether it's the rivers, our stormwater has an impact on the environment. And so, that's why Joe, when he designs the resiliency projects, we have to funnel the water through what they call a stormwater treatment area, so we can, take the time for the water to come through, mesh with the special types of plants that they put in, and then, it comes out refined, or, it's, less nutrients and impurities than they had before it went in. And so there's a permit that we have to get from the state when we have a stormwater system and we have the outfall lines that we have. And with that, they require certain equipment to be installed. One of them is called a baffle box, where the water also goes through a filtration filters to keep the impurities out. And usually it's the larger stuff, the branches, the palm fronds, and those type of things get caught up in the pipes and also get caught up into the system. So we have those. We have the lines themselves, the weirs before the water goes in, and again, it's another opportunity for the impurities to drop out to the bottom of the weir. And so how do we pay for maintaining that? And that's kind of the question of the day. There's ways that, some communities go ahead and make a taxing authority out of it. There's other communities that add a fee to the water bill or to some other utility bill, or they just send out a separate bill. And I've had it different ways in some of the communities that I've worked at. So, the way you institute this is you have to do a study showing what your need is for the dollar amount and how you want to fund it. There is some projections that we've looked out over some of these projects over 5 years, and we'll be discussing that at the next meeting as we go through the capital improvement projects. But right now, we spend roughly about $100,000 to maintain the systems that we have. So when we, everybody thinks, well, they're all new systems. Well, some of the systems are new, but we do have pipelines that run under South Sewell's Point Road and North Sewell's Point Road. The county just fixed one that was their responsibility up on North Sewell's Point Road. And during the course of the budget year, we had a breakdown in the 100 block, I think it was, of South Sewell's Point Road. So, those are expenses that you have to account for, and they have to come from somewhere. So you either account for those expenses in your budget, which is what we've been doing, but I think as we add on these additional projects and do these improvements, it's going to surpass what we can normally allocate into the budget without, obviously, an increase in our tax rate. But I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating for looking at more useful ways that we can and adjust it and deal with all the property owners, whether there's a house on a lot or not. They're responsible for the runoff. So, and there are certain examples of why it's important. Just briefly on there, you can see the environmental protection, the compliance with the regulations, as I discussed, the effective stormwater management. Obviously, those are things that Joe takes a look at, and then just the long-term planning and investment. How do you plan for a road collapse? You can't, but you have to have some type of an emergency fund that you can deal with. And then just community engagement, so everybody kind of understands, we see the lawn crews and even individual homeowners, they're just, taking all the grass clippings and everything else and just, blowing it out into the street. And it hits into the gutter and then gets into the drains, and then that causes more of a problem for us and having purer water going into the rivers. So those are all programs that we need to work on, and I know we've done some of that work with the community engagement, but we need to get better. So So basically, I come before you just to, have a discussion and see if now's the time that you want to look at this. Obviously, knowing where we're at. And again, that commitment is just to do a study. So we can come back with facts and figures and gives you some type of an idea of what the cost factor would be to the resident or to the property owner, really. And then the different avenues that you have at your disposal. But I don't want to do anything unless this commission is, wants to get that information at least. And that's what we're looking at now. I'm not looking for you to make a decision tonight or next meeting. And once we can, if you decide that we can go ahead, then we'll do a study and move on from there and bring it back to you.
Okay. I have some comments or some questions, I guess. Part of the thing that I struggled with while I was reading this is that I really have no baseline understanding of the existing costs. And maybe this is too simplistic the way I'm going to explain it, but, let's say, for instance, we've got 200 drains we have to keep clean now. We have 4 or 5 outfalls. We have 10 pumps. We got 2 generators. That's what we have to maintain now, and it's costing us X number of dollars per year. Okay, well, you can certainly take that number and expand it, what it's going to cost over the next 5 years, next 10 years. At the same time, we're making major improvements. So how are those numbers going to increase based on the improvements we're making? And maybe we can figure out how much that adds to the cost. So the fact that we have no numbers and the fact that I don't think, and maybe it's because of the way we kept the accounts over the years, we didn't necessarily segregate the maintenance costs as a separate item, so it's hard to come up with the exact numbers. But it'd be nice for the commission and for the residents to understand how much maintenance is involved here. A couple of residents called me and talked to me about this, and I explained to them that if you're going to spend $5 or $10 million on infrastructure to raise the roads, it doesn't do any good if the drains are all clogged. So it's important that we come up with the right answer here. But I wish we had some kind of a baseline so I could understand how big the problem is now and how much bigger it's going to get as we finish up the road projects. Commissioner Mayfield.
Yeah, I was going to say that I definitely agree with doing the study because I agree you got to take care of what we build, and we are definitely creating some new infrastructure and improving. But I also think the mayor raises a good point to have at least a little more clear breakdown. This is a little bit general in the memo. So I agree with the mayor, and I also support the study.
Commissioner Gersman.
Yes, I also agree we have to get an idea of what kind of budget we're going to need, a more precise, not an exact, but a precise number. What I'd also like to do, we do have like over $10 million invested, as the mayor said, into the roads, and to go ahead, and a lot of it was given by grant money from the government, and we were lucky to get this money. We got to maintain what we have. I know in the past, and Joe knows about it, where we had outfalls and they weren't maintained. What happened, we had mangroves growing, and then we had special people coming in to do the mangroves. Instead of costing a little bit of money and maintaining it, it would have cost us maybe a few $100s a year to maintain. It wound up costing us, Joe would probably know better than I, but I think it was pushing close to 6 figures. And instead of paying a few $100s a year. So that's why it's important to maintain. Also, code enforcement is pretty important, because I do, and I even showed our town manager, there are people that are just dumping sand and dirt right into the drains after we just spent all that money at the Margarita Mandalay area. The construction sites, when it was raining, the dirt was pouring in, the drains were filling up, and somebody's got to be responsible for this. I mean, negligence, there's no excuse for that. We're paying, once again, we're investing all this money. We've got to protect our investment, and that's the town's investment. And we did pay some of our own money in this, so we are going to have to pay something to maintain this. You can't, it's not going to maintain itself. And I said this when I am all for the project, always have been, but it's something that I brought up from the beginning. There is going to be a cost to maintain it. And this is our only way to avoid flooding eventually, and it gets worse as time progresses. And we're long overdue, and this is part of our infrastructure. We got to protect it.
Commissioner Burrell.
Well, I live probably in the lowest point, and Joe will attest to this, in North Sewell's Point. And there's nothing that's going to stop the water from coming down that hill and going into the sewer at the bottom of the road. All right, it's quite an incline, and it bypasses all the sewers that are vertical, and we have the only horizontal sewer, and it just bangs right into that. And it'll come up a good 4 or 5 feet up my driveway. And the level of the water in the street can get up to like 2.5 to 3 feet. So it's impassable. All right, and Joe can attest to that, and I have pictures that'll show you. Okay, so, I don't care what fee you put on, it's not going to stop that. So I would never be in favor of taxing the residents for that, okay? If you can't stop it, why are residents paying for it? The other issue that I have is, when you talk about North Sewell's Point Road, you talk about it as if it's something that we own. And again, we don't own that road. That belongs to Martin County. If they don't maintain the baffle boxes over there on North Sewell's Point Road, so we have to maintain them. So that's adding extra cost to us when it shouldn't. So somebody's got to tell Martin County, they got to be held accountable too for this. Everybody's great, let's raise the road in North Sewell's Point Road, and let's raise the road in now South Sewell's Point Road. But that water's going to run off anyway. It's going to go into people's yards. So, you could put all the fees you want, all the stuff like that, it's just not going to work. I'm sorry. And the cost of this alone, I don't know how much a study is going to cost, but if you spend $80,000 or $50,000 on a study, you might as well clean out a couple of baffle boxes.
Vice Mayor Fender.
So, yeah, I just thought I'd weigh in on this. I'm focused entirely on the concept of the stormwater utility fee with my comments here. And I will say that every year we go through a budget process. It's hopefully as intricate as it can be, and it should encompass all the data we need to be able to fund the town for the infrastructure as required. Every few years, we have a goal-setting exercise, and in fact, we involve the residents in that goal-setting exercise. And in the time that I've been here, the highest rated goal focus of this commission has always been financial stewardship. So I sort of feel like, and I'll put my unpopular Republican hat on for a second and say that there'll be no way to, the statement and the recommendation is correct. Establishing a stormwater utility fee can be complicated. It will be no more, it will be certainly complicated and not disguised as a tax, right? So I feel like we do need the budgetary infrastructure to maintain the town. I don't understand why we wouldn't know the numbers that you're asking for, and I think that we should have them in order to make sure that we're funding the budget appropriately, whether you dress it up as a stormwater utility fee or a line item in the budget that says, and which I believe we have, and maybe it's too small and needs to be raised, for infrastructure maintenance around stormwater, which we must have. Even if the water rolls downhill, we're still going to have to do something with the water, and we are doing something with it. But I don't want to, I want to make sure that we're doing it the most efficient way possible, not candy coating it as a hidden tax. And also, along with that, when we illustrate what we do around our budget, as we try to do each year, is do it graphically. Each year I request the graph that shows where our tax line is compared to all the municipalities around us, and we're typically at the bottom of that. Somehow we've managed to be very efficient from a tax-based perspective, and as long as we can claim that position compared to our sister municipalities, we also can claim the ability to increase the budget within that constraint to make sure our infrastructure is covered. Obviously, there's pressure to have more, and maybe that's where the pressure for a stormwater utility fee comes from. But my personal feeling is that we should put it into the budget as a line item, keep it there, and if unfortunately we have to raise our ad valorem to cover it, let's try to do it within a way that keeps us efficient against our sister municipalities. So, I don't know how much we would spend. I kind of agree with your last statement, Vinnie, is if we're going to spend 80 grand, let's clean out some baffle boxes,
And I think you're right. We have a couple issues here. First of all, we really don't have the information in our hands to understand the costs and what the costs might be. And once we've established what we realistically think the costs are going to be now and in the future, then we can figure out, or at least start to discuss the sources of that funding. It may be something we can put in the budget. It may be something we can take out of the 0.4 mils that we've already established. There may be other places we can take it from. But I don't really have a strong feeling of what it's going to cost now and what it's going to cost in the future. And I noticed that Joe Capper, he's moved from the third row up to the first row. And it makes me wonder if he'd like to weigh in a little bit.
Mayor, if I may, before Joe comes up.
Sure.
Obviously, I'm trying to keep it basic. When we study it and delve into what we think we're going to need in the future, like I said, we're under 100,000 right now is what we've spent this last year. Not every year you're going to have a collapse, okay? I grant that. But the study is going to help us kind of understand how much we should look at for a system that we have to have money in the reserve so you can handle a catastrophe like that. The study isn't going to cost us $12,000. It's probably going to be somewhere under 1,000 to look at this picture. And obviously, I'm very frugal, and we have the numbers of what we have now, and what we need to do is extrapolate for the future, at least with the next 5 years with our capital projects that we have. So those are the things that I'm looking at. But it's and I apologize. I like to give you as much information as I can, but I think some of this is going to be better by putting it together and the strategies that you can use to extrapolate those numbers.
We absolutely have to talk about it.
Do you let me?
I have a quick,
Sure, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, what were you?
No, I was going to ask Joe to come up as soon as you.
Yeah, right before Joe also, I want to speak too, so.
Okay.
Okay,
We should
I
be-
think mine will be pretty quick. I do agree that just a little spreadsheet of the current costs would be helpful. Sometimes it's hard to find it within the budget. I don't know what's going to that line item. So a little breakdown of costs the past 3 years for what we have had. I think that would be really helpful as we move forward. I will say, and as a credit to our engineer and town managers before, when we started this project, there was always predictions that we would not be able to cover. I'm not saying that's accurate or not, but we always got the capital improvement plan. There was always a line item for maintenance for our new road raising. So I'm not saying we couldn't miraculously find 300,000 a year. I think that's what it was projected when it was done or something like that in our budget. But I just want to say, I don't see that happening. So that's mine.
Commissioner Kurtzman.
Yeah, the other thing I do want to say, the project has worked, honestly, Commissioner Brill. What happened is, I live by where the first part is, and I see firsthand. I've had my house there since 2010. Every year, we would see flooding come up the road from the king tides over and over. The entire road would be unpassable. Our police chief could tell you that. I know Commissioner Mayfield had to pass through there. Commissioner Fender sees it. But after they did the project, not only once has there been water, and that's when we had a Category 1 hurricane. Other than that, it hasn't affected the property owners. When there has been water, it's been from the drain, and it goes right back down after an hour, half an hour. It's gone, compared to a week or two. And it just gets mosquito-ridden, swampy, kills the grass. It's not the case anymore. Everything changed. It's like a breath of fresh air. 3 years now, it's been gone. It works, at least where we are. I could say that. And, I'd like to see that pretty much for everybody. I know they plan on South Sewell's Point Road. It'll be nice to drive home without having to drive through seawater on my car necessarily, or anybody else, because what happens, even though sometimes when you see it's not water, it's still on the road, it kicks up in the car, it creates rust on the cars, and it's just, it's just a nasty thing to do, and I know we've had so many complaints through the years about the flooding, and we're finally doing something about it. And, you know, it's being paid for by grants. There is going to be a maintenance cost. Anything good does happen to have a maintenance cost. And I know constantly we're expending a ton of money trying to maintain what's on Riverview. It's constantly backed up all the time. Those poor people, it goes all the way, almost sometimes halfway up the road when that backs up because it wasn't maintained properly through the years. It was done, but it was never maintained, and enough to where it creates the problems where it has to be redone. I'll let Joe go from here.
Commissioner Burrow first.
First of all, you're talking about a king tide. You just mentioned the king
Well,
tide
not
and the
just-
water comes up.
Well,
You're not going to
storms,
stop.
no, no, storms too, heavy
You're
rainstorms.
not going to stop that, okay?
We have.
You've got storms, you've got storms.
But
You've
we
got king
have.
tides, you've got king tides. If you're telling me it's better now, then why would we need to improve it?
It's only better in the
We
new
gotta
part.
maintain it,
No, it has been improved.
It's only better in the new part.
but it has to be maintained.
Yes.
Right, but, you know, at what cost? I mean, we have to know exactly what the cost is going to be. Now, I don't, you know, I can guess, and if the study is $1,000, it's worth doing for $1,000, okay? But if,
Yeah.
but if it comes in like, oh, well, now we have to do this, and now we have to do that, I don't want to see that. If the cost goes up on a study, that's a red flag for me.
Well, everything has a value.
But-
And
Right, everything does.
Okay, Mr. Capper.
Speaking of value.
I can see you were wanting to come up and say a few words.
Well, first of all, I wasn't going to come up, and then I said, well, I better, talk a little bit about this, and you guys are kind of talking about apples and oranges, just so you know. There's capital improvements, which we can put in place to solve some of the flooding problems, and like you say, we're still going to get flooding, but at least we can get rid of the water in a reasonable amount of time. That's what we're doing, technically. And we have permits we have to get for everything we do out here, so we are benefiting the river, okay, by cleaning the water up before we send it out. So there's a certain amount of that. What makes it very difficult to do a job or a project that doesn't cost a lot of money to maintain is we don't have land. We basically put things in our road right away, and we put underground storage, and it's great, people don't see it and everything, but that underground storage takes a lot more maintenance than if I were to have a nice big retention area that I just have to go clean and mow and so forth, okay? So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. In '94, we did a study based on basically a master plan as well as a study on the benefit of a stormwater utility. We were given a grant by the Water Management District, okay? It was for $50,000 to do both of those items, a master plan and a study on stormwater utilities. And it was more of an educational program for a whole year, and we went before, at that time, we signed an LPA, and then after the LPA, it went to the board, and they made the decision. At the end, they decided they didn't want to incur another fee for the residents, and they decided to do it with their budget. And we've been doing that for years. It works, okay? I'm not telling you it doesn't work. However, the item you should know is most municipalities have now gone to a stormwater utility fee. It's not just because they want to do it for maintenance, but the fact of the matter is, all these grants you're getting will not pay for maintenance. And a matter of fact, most of the grants you're going to be getting from the state, they look at, do you have a stormwater utility fee? They want to see that you are going to maintain the system they're giving you money for. And it's not that they don't trust you, it's they don't trust you. Let's be honest about it. They don't, most of the time it doesn't get cleaned up. Now, just so you know, what happens in this town is you have one maintenance guy, right? And then you got Jack, okay? And we've got a continuing service provider that'll fix things for us. But fact of the matter, if we got a rainfall planned, okay, or a rainfall is going to happen, or a storm's going to come in, we have to go out and check and clean, make sure our inlets and outfalls and everything are working. Because we're a tree city. We have branches, we have leaves, we have all these things, fill that up and clog it. So you know that hour and a half it takes to dry down? If we got a clog up, it's going to take hours and days to clean it if we don't clean these systems up. So your maintenance cost has gone up, okay? The idea of a study, I'm not going to do the study for you folks, so I don't really care how much you spend on it. But the fact of the matter is, there's an agency which Bob has been given information, Florida Stormwater Association, and they tell you what other municipalities have. They tell you how this works and everything. They tell you how to set it up, okay? You can get very complex about it, okay? It's a matter of, you get a fee for, you charge a fee for something, and they have to get a benefit for it, which in our case, the benefit is they can drive down the road and the roads aren't flooded, or the stormwater has a place to go, okay? They don't guarantee anything. It just basically says that you're going to maintain a system, okay? So that's not going to be hard to get done, okay? I will tell you, just to give you, I looked at the city of Stewart's one, for example. You just quoted us numbers of $250,000 over 2 years, right? 2.5 years. It's about $125,000 a year, okay? How many resident homes are there in town? 1,500, 2,000? I mean, you pick the number. It's got to be one of those two. It's in between those numbers. That's how many homes. And of course, town hall and the commercial, they pay a certain fee too, okay? In Martin County, those are the guys that complain the most. All the commercial businesses, they didn't like the idea of establishing how much impervious area, because it's based on the impervious area, and they were paying more. But just let's say it's 2,000, you're talking, if it's 2,000 or 1,500, if it's 1,500 properties that you're going to put this fee to, just so you know, it comes to about $6.94 a month, okay? Because it's usually a monthly fee, and you'll get it on your, you'll either get it in your utility bill, or you can pay it all at once at the end of the year in a tax bill. So people like to pay for these typically as utility, it's a utility fee, okay? Again, it's, what they're doing in Port St. Lucie is they're using that money strictly for maintenance. They don't use it for capital improvement. They use it for maintenance. Not that they can't use it for capital improvement, but strictly for maintenance. So everybody does this a little differently. To give you an idea, City of Stewart, for example, their rate, and it's just went up, and this is the rate before it went up, okay, was about $7.99 a month, okay? So the one I just gave you, based on what you have now, that doesn't include all the additional maintenance we're going to have to do once we get all these systems put in place. We're at $6.94, so we're at least we're $1 less than them a month is what they are. Now, what I found out in the last grants that I turned in for City of Stewart, for example, they wanted these utility rates. They would give you more points if your utility rate was between $7.50 and $8 an ERU or a resident, okay? That's the way they looked at it. And so there is a benefit to getting grants, and they like to see a certain amount because they don't necessarily believe that you can maintain your stormwater system at a low rate. Now, you can prove to them that it works, and then they'll give you the benefit of the grant, okay, or points for the grant. So, I mean, the great resource is the Florida Stormwater Association. They can tell you every size proper municipality in the state, and you can see what other ones that are similar in size, similar ERUs, that's what they call them. Those are the units that you pay for, okay? So they can tell you these numbers, okay? You probably are going to spend, depending on how much you want to be challenged about this, and how much you, because you will be challenged, okay, by your residents by it, of course, and, you know, you can spend quite a bit of money. I will tell you, I've never seen it done for $1,000, but it's not that it can't be done for $1,000. Bob's pretty resourceful, so I'm just telling you, you're going to spend some money on it. But the fact of the matter is, you've been doing it in the past by just using it in your general fund. I'm not telling you not to do it there. I'm just telling you, you would get more grants, and we are highly reliable on grants. So you need to do whatever you can to make those make us look good for those grants, because, folks, we've been getting grants for the HMGP. Now everybody in the county is working on them, okay? Indian Town's into it. You know, you got Ocean Breeze is going after the hospital. The hospital wasn't even after these grants when we first started going after the ones you're working with right now. All these agencies now have found, hey, there's money coming from the federal government, state government, we're going after it. And I'm just telling you, the competition is fierce. And, you know, before we were able to kind of be in there and on these boards and making sure we were on the top. But we were on the top, actually we had the top six projects in the local mitigation strategy group, okay? Now, county's up there, city of Stewart's up there, I mean, we're faltering down, and quite frankly, we need any benefit we can provide to this to get more grants, because we're not gonna be out there getting and that's why we gotta get all these done, because all these projects that we're talking about now, they're on the list, and we are on the top. But we're gonna go down the list here shortly. So I'm not telling you to do this, because I really, we've been working without it, but it does, people do not get grants that don't have this, okay? If you don't have a stormwater utility, most of the time you do not get grants. Now, we've been able to get grants because we've been spending the money and they know where we're located. So you can look at it that way and say, well, maybe we don't need a stormwater utility. But the fact of the matter is, everything I'm seeing lately is they're looking for you to have a utility. So I probably said more than you wanted to hear.
No, it's fine. Joe, just let me ask you a question, going back to my original issue about, the scope of what we are required to maintain in terms of, storm drains, outfalls, pumps, generators. Is there a way to correlate that with the cost, and then, we know we're going to be increasing on some of those, and also make the correlation to, as we move forward?
Yes, we can do that. We've actually done that a couple of times. Over the years, we've actually come up with maintenance costs on all these based on what we've spent, okay? And again, but let's be realistic about this. You don't know how many storms you're going to get a year, okay? And the projection is we're going to get more, and they're going to be more intensified. That's why they've been giving out money for vulnerability and so forth. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's going to be a matter of how many storms you get. So if we predict that we're going to get 3 large storms events and we end up having 5 or 6, your numbers get changed a little bit. But we can figure out the cost. But let's remember the items that you are maintaining, because this is the other thing that you have to think about. We have property owners association that are supposed to be maintaining their stormwater systems. How many property owners associations that that are actually well-funded and have participation and are actually cleaning out their stuff? They may be mowing, which is great when you got a dry retention area. Our stormwater treatment areas have plants in them, okay? Those plants have to survive, okay? We may not have mulch, we may have rock in there. We have outfalls that have valves that open and close. A palm frond gets in the middle of that, guess what? It's open, and guess what happens to seawater? It comes right up. So you're talking, you're talking a significant amount of more maintenance than you've been doing now. How many exfiltration pipes? They all got to be cleaned out, because guess what? We got 2 lines going down all of North and South Sewell Point Road. We don't maintain North Sewell Point. So let me go to that, because you have to understand, there was outfalls out there for the road, okay? And this had happened long before my time. And so those were being maintained by the county. Then what happened, the developments happened on either side of the road, of North Sewell Point Road. And guess what? There was an arrangement made. Well, you're going to have to maintain this stormwater system now. And that's how we end up out cleaning most of the outfalls out there. I think the number's about, we clean out about 5 of them, and they clean out about 3 of them, okay? And probably Tina will tell me I'm lying to you, so she knows better than me about which ones the county maintains. So I'm just telling you what has happened and why we are ended up maintaining them is because we approved the developments, and the county said, well, that's your development, and it's got a pipe system that, yes, drains my road, but basically you're going to have to maintain it now. So that's, I believe, how it all went down, because there is a difference, and you're right, we are probably maintaining more, but that's because those outfalls, they do drain their road, but they also drain our subdivisions. So that's been how it kind of fell out. Anyways, and that's kind of been a gentleman's agreement, and they have been maintaining.
That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see that agreement sometime.
Yeah, well, there's no agreement. There's no agreement. It's a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
And they tell me, well, we kind of yell at them to make sure they clean their stuff up. I'm not saying they do it as much as we do, but I think pretty often they're doing it at least once a year, just like we are. So anyways, I'm all for what you're saying. We'd love to get a lot more money out of the county to do this, but it's just like the sewer system. You know, nobody wants it, if you want it, you gotta implement it, you gotta put everything together for them, because they've got other people they're attending to, not that they shouldn't be taking care of the town. And they take care of them, I guess, as much as best they can. Anything else?
I don't know. Vice Mayor Bender.
Yeah. So, thank you, Joe. Wealth of information as always, and I'm so appreciative of having your background and information to add color to all of these issues, especially around the engineering. So thanks for that. Based on what you've told me, I heard that we did a study in '94. I don't know if it's possible for us to get a copy of that. Things have certainly changed in that time, but I would imagine the reasons that the commission at that time chose not to move forward with the stormwater utility field, because it's going to be highly unpopular, for people sitting in our position to move forward on. But, the numbers that you're specifying, which weren't specified before, are tolerable, certainly. Did you say that we've calculated our number at 694?
Well, I just did the number based on what he put in there. It's about 125,000 a year, is what you said, or 135,000 a year. And I basically just divided that by.
City of Stewart,
I
about
divide-
$8.
Yeah, City of Stewart's is totally different.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, we did a master plan for them this year. In 2021, their maintenance alone was about $450,000 on stormwater. Much bigger municipality.
Yeah.
You can't use it as a comparison, really. But the point is, price per maintenance is there. And and of course, let's be honest about it, they have all the equipment they need. They've got a group of about 4 people that do it.
Yeah.
Us, we don't have that, so we're hiring it out. And it costs money when we go to Sunshine to clean some things out.
Yeah, I understand.
And we
then
tried working with the
should
city,
have the
too.
budget for that. I mean,
Yeah, and we, just so you know, we have looked at, the city has a back truck, for example. We've used them in the past, okay? But the problem is they don't have the equipment to get down the side lots and the back lots all the way to the river.
Sure.
So that's why we had to use a private enterprise. And they did the price per inlet the same as the city did. They charge us per inlets and so forth. But the pipe cleaning was time and materials, because that pipe gets clogged. It's a lot more intensive than just having a vacuum truck to suck it out.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I mean,
I'm most concerned about the concept of grant impact and not having the concept. And I just wonder if, there's a way in a grant application to indicate, specifically budget carved out for something that's not called a stormwater utility fee, but clearly we have a budget line item for maintenance, and, it has to meet the requirement that the grant would specify. It sounds to me like, you said it a couple times, that we will be negatively impacted by not implementing a stormwater utility fee as it pertains to phase 2, 3, and 4 of the project that we're well embarked upon, that we actually have to complete now. I mean, to solve some of the flooding issues. So I feel like we're kind of being held hostage to that from the impopularity of a stormwater utility fee versus the necessity and the popularity of the road raising project that is going to resolve the flooding issue, right? So we'd probably need more information. I don't know that it's worth $50,000 to a study for something we can figure out, but I would like to see the official study that cost us $50,000 in 1994, so.
yeah, just so you know, back then we were talking $2. All they wanted you to do is establish it, okay?
Yeah.
And so $2 a month, okay? So that's a very small amount.
Yeah.
But their intention was to get people inclined to have committed dollars for maintenance. That's really what the intention was. So that is totally different. But it's the same concept of, you got to show a benefit if you're going to start charging people money for a fee, and charge them a fee. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, we'll
it's
start
normal.
filling up seats in this room again, as we did 2 years ago when we started talking about fees, just so we're clear.
Well, and like I said, recently, Martin County didn't adopt one, okay? And so they tried to adopt one about 3 years ago. Basically, the commercial people came unglued.
Yeah,
Because
that's what I'm telling you.
the numbers were staggering of how much it takes to really maintain the systems.
Yeah.
And so, they clean them out as best they can. But anyways, like I said, it's something to think about. I'm not saying it's the best thing, or you have to do it, I'm just telling you, just so you know, where we are on the grants and so forth, Phase 2, we're pretty close to what we need, okay, to get it built. Phase 3, we're very close. I'm pretty sure we got the money we need. I'm just, what we need for that one, okay? Phase 4, we haven't even got a grant yet to do that one. North Sewell's Point, as you know, we started out, Vinnie, to just kind of get the ball rolling. We did get a grant, and quite frankly, it's never been our intention to basically spend a lot of money. Our intention is to kind of lay it out and to get as many grants as we can. And we think between the county and ourselves, we will get a good portion of that. So I just want you to know, as much as the numbers are much larger for North Sewell's Point Road, you know, I don't think it's the county's intention or our intention is to putting a lot of our local money into it. Its intention is to get these grant agencies to put money in. I think from the aspect of a transportation corridor, as well as the stormwater, as well as sea level rise, as well as resiliency, you know, we stand pretty well in the amount of population that does use that road. You know, I think we stand pretty good. We'll get some rather large grants. It would be better, I mean, if we were to go after it ourselves, we will not get enough money. If the county goes after it themselves, they may not get enough, but together, I think we get a good chunk of that money.
Thanks, Jeff.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I've been sitting here thinking about it, and one of the things that I think is appealing about a stormwater fee, used strictly for maintenance, keywords used strictly for maintenance, is because it's a set amount of money for a specific purpose. You know, it's kind of like how we raise the taxes, and we said only that amount, specific purpose, capital projects. So as a taxpayer, I like to know what my money is going towards. So I think that is appealing. And then that being said, if we're always talking about budget, you can always lower your ad valorem taxes, but then you'll know you have the money to pay for your stormwater. You know, every year we go through our budget, and I'm sure the residents would love to have us lower the tax rate. So as opposed to trying to always group it into that thing, the residents can know what they're paying for, and overall could maybe be paying the same amount, something like that. It just depends how you look at it or do it, because I think the aspect of being appealing for grants, why I understand why you say, oh, you feel kind of handicapped by it, but this is how we do our projects. We don't, I mean, looking at our budget, we can't do real projects like South Sewell's Point Road, even the South River Road project, we couldn't afford to do on our own. Like, so unless, you know, I like being a municipality, and I think we need to learn to take care of ourselves. And if we can't do these big projects, you know, it's like you got to become a part of the county, because who's going to do the projects if we're not going to do them? So I think those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Brill.
I just have a question. So we're saying basically it's $125,000 a year that we spend on maintaining what we have right now?
That's what we're doing. That's what the numbers show.
So went back 2.5 years, it was 250,000 roughly.
For 2.5 years, so I just divided,
Okay. So,
that's how I did it.
so there is no way that we can find $125,000 a year in our budget?
I was talking about
I'm
for
just
the,
curious.
no, I'm talking about for the increase as we continue doing the project. I think this is to kind of establish it and pay for the maintenance that's going to be new.
Yeah, no, that's not really not my question. My question is, I mean, when we sit down and do the trim and we go through the budget and we delete items and we include items, we can't find 125,000? I believe we can.
Well, that would only take care of what we have now. I'm trying to prepare for
Well,
the
that's what
future.
I'm talking about now. In years, we can always do something different, but right now, to keep it even lower for our residents, we should do whatever we can through the budget. And later on, if we need to raise it, you know, whatever is down the road, in 10 years, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
then we can do it through the budget.
I just like preparing ahead, and I think it's responsible to, if we're going to build this, plan ahead. That's kind of how I feel.
But the point I was trying to make with it, you are going to find the $125,000 in your budget, but guess what? You're going to lose some points in a grant application. That's all I'm trying to point to you. And so, not that you have been unsuccessful in getting grants now. The point is the competition's getting stronger, and we're not seeing the large money that we've actually been able to see in the last 3 years. Last year was not as much money. Now, I could be wrong, because you've been up in the legislature, and maybe you guys can get them to give us more money, but the fact of the matter is, I'm not seeing money, the dollar amounts going up as far as what they're allocating. Because now everybody knows that there's money there for stormwater improvements and so forth, and they're all going after it. That's what's happening. Again, you will find the 125,000, and that's exactly what you did in '94 till now. You find the money to do it, but you're not getting the benefit of the grants. That's all. And
Well, back then, we weren't applying for these kinds of grants.
what's that?
Back then, we weren't applying for these kinds of grants, I'm sure.
Well, you're right. They weren't the same value. But yeah, we used to go over to the county, we go to South Florida Water Management District, you know, John Chicky and me go over, can you find us we need about $50,000 to put a couple baffle boxes in. And they find us some money. So, yeah, you're right. It's a totally different game now. That's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Kurzman.
Yeah, I think pretty much what we have unfortunately, we have to look forward to is the raising that we're going to see in our taxes from Stewart Fire and Rescue. That's going to be going up around, it's kind of past 700,000. Then we're going up to close to, pushing up to 8. So when we started out, only a few years back, it was 300,000. So that's constantly growing. The overall overhead is going up in general. Those are two of the major things. And the other thing I was going to ask, is it possible to do something on permit fees to help offset? Can we do something towards stormwater fee and a building permit?
Well, again, you have to show you have to show a benefit and why a new house would have more impact than the old existing house. So I don't, that's why you would want to spend some money on a study to do that, right? I'm not an expert on that, but, I mean, there's impact fees for everything, right? Roadway impact fees, hospitals, sheriff. I mean, you can impose these all day long. I'm not advocating them, I'm just telling you that's what you could do. I just don't know about whether putting a fee on one residential home,
It sounds
especially now,
sounds like a one-time shot, which isn't,
Yeah.
which I don't think is the answer, unfortunately.
There's a process under state law and certain criteria that have to be met and steps that have to be taken in order to establish and justify any kind of an impact fee, including a stormwater fee. So I think if you impose a fee that is sort of a workaround, it's going to be vulnerable to challenge.
I appreciate you letting me know that.
We don't want that.
Okay,
Legal wording.
thank you, Joe. We've talked about this for a while. Do we have any muddled direction that we can give the town manager?
I thought it sounded like at least if the study was reasonably priced, everyone was mostly on board. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. With getting the information of maybe a
Yeah,
spreadsheet of what we spent and what,
yeah, I have no problem with that as long as it, like I said, it not only includes how much we've spent, but, you know, the order of magnitude of the work now as to where we think it's going to grow in the next few years. You know, and hey, there's always a possibility we can handle it within the constraints of the budget, or if we've got other avenues, but I don't have any feel for that yet.
And that's the hardest part that I want to hone in on. We can go back and figure out what we've spent historically, and that's how we came up with the numbers that we had here for the last 3 years, or 2.5 years. But, you know, we need to have a great system on how we calculate that so it can meet any challenges that we might have. Whether we put it in the budget as a line item, or whether we you know, have a special fee, or however you want to do that. So that's what I want, is that opportunity. Believe me, if it comes out much more than $1,000, I'm going to be right here talking to you. But I think if we're focusing on the future, which is, you know, where we got to look for the fee. Yeah, we know what we spent now. Let's look at what, if we're going to institute a fee, what's going to carry us through the next 5 years, say, for our, because that's what our capital improvement is, or whatever period of time you all want to look at. But that's kind of, you know, where I'm thinking for a philosophy, and then, you know, hone in on, you know, narrowing that cost. This is the calculation that you do, and this is how you set it up. And then I can come back with a full report to you all.
I think that would be all right.
I recall this topic came up around the fire rescue costs. What are we doing for them now regarding a fire rescue fee?
We don't pay a fire rescue fee.
I mean, do we have a comparable fire rescue fee parallel to a stormwater utility fee?
We could, but we've never set one up.
There was a discussion about it.
Yep.
So-
To break it out.
I know, so my point is, it seems fairly parallel, and to your point earlier, which I've been wanting to mention but haven't, I mean, your suggestion then is, if we were talking about the fire rescue fee in the context of this conversation, are you suggesting that our ad valorem taxes would go down commensurate to the creation of a stormwater utility fee or the creation of a fire rescue fee? That way you would see the line items of what you're paying in taxes, which was your thesis. You're okay.
As an accountant, I cannot answer that. That's a lot of speculation going into those numbers, and I would never say, yeah, it would go down, but theoretically, it could. But Commissioner Kurzman raised a good point about how the fees are going up by a lot anyway, so you'd have to
Well,
take an in-depth look at the
My
budget.
point is why, if the bigger fee, which is fire rescue, is not being handled in the way we're describing stormwater utility fees, why would we handle stormwater any different? You know, the question is stormwater utility issues more impactful than fire rescue? I don't think so, other than the grant thing is super important, of course, but,
And obviously, $6 a month per resident is not going to cover what you're going to pay for fire rescue.
well, that's my point,
true.
is the fire rescue fee is going to be a pretty significant chunk compared to the
Right.
stormwater utility fee. That's why I'm bringing it up in context of that conversation. If we're going to start line iteming all of our budgetary expenses as special line item fees, then, you know, I don't know if it's a slippery slope, but the question is what things become fees and what becomes outside of the budget that we have to plan for anyway and should have a line item, right?
And it does. We do account for the
No,
fire
of course you
rescue.
do.
And we could
That's-
do the same thing for stormwater. That's,
Well, I think we do, but,
Right.
but we're talking about not doing that. We're talking about pulling it out as a separate quote-unquote tax that will, I'm not saying that word, but yeah, I mean, that's the unpopular side of this.
right. And that's why that
Yeah,
decision
yeah,
rests
yeah.
with you all, not me. So, but I want to give you as much information as I can so you can make an
No,
intelligent
and you are,
decision.
and I appreciate it. I'm not
So-
being
No,
drug free at all. I'm happy with the conversation. I just letting you know my thoughts about it, and I have to learn from you as to where we go, so.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the suggestion when you were talking about the costs we've spent and the costs for the future. I think, because we have talked about maintenance costs a lot, but I would love what we spent at least with a little bit more of a breakdown with like drain, just more specifics written down in a spreadsheet format. I think that
Yeah,
helps to
that's
see.
fine.
We always just hear it and then that kind of goes out of my brain. So just, I know you wrote 250,000 for 2.5 years, but that just sounds like generic talk. But if I see it in a spreadsheet broken down by
You need an accountant talk.
or like, we clean drains and like South Sewell, just something to help us process.
We'll have that for you at the next meeting, and then I will have an update on, where we are with getting the study done, so.
Okay.
All right, any additional discussion? Okay, let's move on to.
Do I have clear direction? Do we vote on it?
Do you want to vote? Or just,
Yeah, I want some type of direction from all of you that, at least I can go to
wanna
this
see
next
Which one of the
step.
commissioners can come up with the motion?
That's why it's nice being the chairman.
I can try.
Okay,
Okay, I'd make a motion to do a study, $1,000 or less, to look at stormwater fees and how that comes about, and also provide the commission with information on costs already spent and predictions for the future.
not bad. Is there a second?
I like it, second.
Any additional discussion? Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fender,
No.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell.
No.
Okay. Next item is new business 11B, Code Enforcement Board Member Appointment. Commissioner Burrill.
Okay, thank you. As a newly elected official, I have the privilege of being able to appoint someone to the Code Enforcement Board. And I'm able to nominate a person who I think I have trust in. I believe he'll to be a real asset to the Code Enforcement Board, and that is Dr. Chuck Farrell.
Okay, is there any discussion? I think it'd be a great addition as well.
Absolutely.
A motion to approve the appointment?
Second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Burrell?
Yes.
Mayor Tom Peck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fender?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, we're
We did discuss my fee.
billable hours, right?
And you'll be paid as much as the commissioners.
Twice as much? Yeah, 2 times 0?
With benefits.
Still 0. Thank you all.
That means
Thank
you get
you.
5 pats on the back.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, so that brings us down to commission and staff closing comments. Mr. Daniels.
Yes, as I mentioned, we are having our Rooted in the Community Arbor Day celebration, and that's going to be in Lantana Park. We are doing a tree giveaway. You know, last year we kind of did the educational piece in the Town Commons Park. This time, it's, we have a flyer that we're going to hand out. We have 150 trees to the first residents that come up, and they, depending on, you know, what trees they pick, there's 3 different types of trees, and they can pick the tree, we put it in their car, we give them, you know, the guides on planting it, and if they need some assistance, then there's people that they can talk to about coming and planting the tree for them. So, pardon me?
We know what kind of trees?
It's a gumbo limbo, what are the other 2, Chief?
Bay Rum, I think, is
Bay Rum.
13, which is actually more edgy.
So those are the 3 that we have. We paid for it out of the tree fund. We weren't able to get the grant funding we wanted, but I think we got a pretty good price on them. And then after, that runs, they're figuring to be maybe 8 to 10, but if you come early and get your tree, you can come back here, and we're having another discussion on the tree canopy, and you can see some pictures of some of the trees that they've been discussing. But Joe will be back with Mike Flaw at 9 o'clock right here, and discussing what preferences the residents might have for the tree canopy. Excuse me. One other thing, I just received some dates today on the annual conference for the Florida League of Cities, and they're holding it in Hollywood at the Diplomat Beach Resort, August 15th through the 17th. That's the 2024 annual conference. As I get more information, I will pass that along. I don't believe any of the commissioners have attended since I've been here, and I do, though, want to make sure that you are availed the information so I can pass that along to you. And I am going to be out of town May 1st through roughly the 6th or 7th. But then my wife's having a procedure, so I'll probably be out the 8th. But as soon as I fine-tune those dates, I'll let you know. My son's graduating, and my wife is graduating with her master's. So I have 2 graduations in 2 different areas that aren't in South Florida. So, but again, I'm available by phone if anybody needs me, and you know, the staff does great when I'm not around too. So that's all I have.
I remember they did a tree giveaway, I think it was maybe 2005 or 2006, something like that. And I got 4 or 5 of those trees, and they're this big now. Stuff grows fast here. Okay, so that brings us to commissioner comments. Commissioner Burrell.
Yeah, I just want to talk about ad hoc committees. I got a call from a couple of residents wanting to know if they could form a committee to count the selections, the votes, or whatever they are, you know, that form that you sent out.
Well, it's not a vote, it was just a survey on where they would want them, yeah.
They want to know if they could form a committee to count them. That's all I'm bringing out. That's it.
And do these particular individuals not trust Mr. Daniels or
They probably don't
April
trust me.
April from county?
I think there was some misunderstandings that this is like another referendum or something. All we're trying to do is find out, you know, which systems are failing so we can try to get them help as quick as we can. And also to give some type of idea of how many people are going to, you know, avail themselves of the sewers when they become available. So that's, the only thing, there's no master plan, and, you know, we're not rediscussing this issue. You know, obviously the lines are already in on the part one, and we're moving forward for June or July start to the system. So, but, you know, we've had some good, I think, about 190 roughly surveys back out of roughly 706 that we sent out. So it's, you know, pretty good percentage. We mailed it to each and every property owner, and we have been keeping track of everyone that comes in and what their feelings are. You know, there are some that don't want to connect to the sewers at all, and that's the beauty of what your direction was. It's not a mandatory hookup, and it's not a mandatory assessment. And I know there's a lot of things that have been put out in writing and everything else, and if you look at, you know, even some of the comments were things that happened in 2021. Well, this commission didn't decide and give the authority until December of 2022. And, you know, that was after the CapTech study, and that mandate that you gave, the commission that was here at the time that you gave, that's what we're following until you tell me differently, and that's, you know, that's the direction that you gave me. So we're already working on part two with the design and the interlocal agreement that we'll be bringing forward to you all to approve, and then it'll go to the county, because that was part of the caveat before. I had to have an interlocal agreement with the county before I could proceed. So we still have the funding. Everything's going good with the funding, and we are working off. We're waiting on the approval from the funding agency to use the same unit numbers that we got through our procurement process. And if they give us the go-ahead, then we're good to go. Right, Joe?
Vice Mayor Fender.
All right, thanks. Yeah, two things. The first is, I'm excited about the Arbor Day celebration on Saturday, and then, like Mayor Tompak said, I was also the recipient of about 6 of those trees back after Francis and Jean, and 4 of them probably in my front yard are giant queen palms, and at this point, if they fell over, they'd probably do some serious damage to my house. So they're, you know, that was a great tree giveaway that replaced a lot of the foliage that we lost during those storms. But really, my topic of choice is the least favorite topic I have is 10 Oakwood Drive. You know, so I have to bring it up again. Not a day goes by when a resident doesn't stop me and complain about the deviation from the spirit of our ordinances that construction project has taken on our street. And mainly, probably it would have been to their interest, or they would have less pushback from the neighbors on the street. And you've probably received some of the emails from some that I've seen in the last couple of weeks. I hope you've read them. Certainly the one from Diane Corson was pretty specific and laid a timeline of what she's experienced every day living across the street from that construction. But had they just maintained at least one of the heritage oaks on that property, the one that was sitting right next to the street where the circle of their driveway is today, they'd probably be in a lot better stead with the neighborhood. But clearly, their permeability percentages are out of whack against the spirit of our ordinance, and I'm hoping, and that's really what we should get to, is I thought we were going to bring forward the ordinance change to close out now the second loophole we're closing out in our ordinances, because for some reason we're not administering permits in the spirit of the ordinances that we have. We didn't require a mitigation plan at the beginning, so we closed that loophole. We continue to cite the Florida state statute that anybody can cut any tree down they want, which we should talk about why that is patently an inappropriate administrative direction of any town to pursue just because the state allows it. And the third is that now we've learned a new loophole that somehow we've allowed them to pursue with paver bricks. They're clearly in violation of the permeability ordinance, even though the definition of permeability includes somebody tacked on the end of it that they could get away with it with a paver brick. Not the term permeable paver brick, but any paver brick that allows impermeability. Now, somehow magically eradicates the ability of permeability to not be enforceable. So we've got to change that, clearly, but we shouldn't even allow it. We should say, you know what? Let's take it to court, because clearly our ordinance says you have to be within a certain permeability specific. I get that you want to put paver bricks here, but you shouldn't. And I'm telling you, as a building official, I don't recommend you do this, and you're going to get some heat from your neighbors and the commission, which now we don't go to the commission, we're going to a magistrate, which is okay, but when we go to the magistrate, it can't be just because we want to collect a check. It's because we want them to mitigate the damage they've done to the community. So I'd like to see them, in lieu of paying us money, plant some trees back on that property. You know, this week, now the fourth attack, I got text this week saying they're digging holes in the property. We're like, well, great, hopefully they're digging holes to plant trees. No, they're digging holes to plant concrete poles to put lights on. You know, so apparently they're building a giant gate or wall or something in front of it instead of, and in the process of doing so, cutting more roots out of the two remaining trees that are on the corners of their property. So, you know, it's frustrating for me as a person who lives on the street and gets bombarded with, like, how are you allowing this to happen? But the fact that we're, as a staff, not fighting against it harder to make sure that the character of our town and the, you know, Joe stood up and said, hey, we're a tree city. Are we a tree city? Because we're certainly not a tree city on 10 Oakwood Drive. We've clear cut that lot, and we're, so far, I haven't seen them come back to mitigate any trees on that lot. So you know, I'm ranting, I'm frustrated, but, you know, once upon a time, to the point about the city, the state allowing us to cut down any tree we want without fighting against it is, you know, we were allowed to own slaves in America at one point. Probably not the best thing to do, but if you rolled over and said, hey, we're allowed to own slaves, let's do it. Well, you know, we're allowed to cut down trees too. We should not cut down trees. And as a town, we should.
It's kind of a
I know,
dangerous parallel.
It's a strong metaphor, exactly. But my point is, every time we bring this up, don't quote the statute that says, oh yeah, you're allowed to cut down every tree you want because somebody in Tallahassee who owns a lumber mill said you could. So we should be fighting harder against it. That's all I'm saying.
I think, you know, I share some of your frustration, but I don't, unfortunately, I don't agree with your assessment that they've violated any of the permit requirements. I had a fairly detailed discussion with Jack about the house, a few days ago, and they've taken it to the max. There's no question about it. Every square inch they could build on, they've built on, and they took advantage of it. And you call it a loophole, but the ordinance does say that the pavers.
The ordinance doesn't say that.
Well, you showed me something that said.
The definition says it.
Or the definition.
The definition of what permeability things are.
Okay, so whatever, but that they met that. Now, whether, and I personally agree with you that I don't think pavers, whether they're put in sand or whatever, are really permeable surfaces. Okay, but they took advantage of that loophole. So in terms of what they did, I don't think, as much as we don't like it, I don't think we have a really firm footing to go back other than the trees.
We shouldn't have let them do it to begin with. We should have been very vocal about, you realize this is against the spirit of this ordinance. But I agree with you, you're right. I mean, they can take the loophole. My point now is, I had to fix the mitigation loophole, now I want to fix the paver brick loophole, which you just agreed to is actually a loophole.
And that's fine, but we can't put our building official under, you know, the pressure of trying to meet the spirit. He's going to be meeting the language.
Why can't we?
because
He
that's.
knows what this town's about. I mean, he knows we live in a tree city. Why are we allowing them clear-cut lots?
Well, I think, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with that, but I think he's got to maintain exactly what the wording says. Otherwise, we're going to get ourselves in trouble. And maybe there's good reason to get us in trouble in certain cases. You know, we've spent,
That's my point.
and we spent a considerable amount of time on tree ordinance. I think if we need to rework it or make it, you know, more severe, I don't have a problem with that.
This isn't more severe. This is just deleting that stupid word that allows the loophole.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, that was,
I think,
Commissioner Burrell.
Mr. Daniels, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. First off, we have to be careful of the word "we." We did not clear cut a lot. The owner of that lot clear cut the lot. Okay? So please, let's direct our
We allowed it.
frustration. Well, we didn't allow it. They did it, and we came back, and that's how we knew about the mitigation problem, and we did that. The paver aspect, that's been in the ordinance before I got here. Whenever you did the comp plan amendments, that paver restriction was in there. We can't say,
You know
oh,
why I know that's not true?
okay.
Is because I've tried to build things. And I've been greeted with that, you're not meeting the permeability requirement. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't go through and hunt down the loophole that allowed me to bypass it. I lived by the ordinance. That's all I'm telling you. And I think you must agree that we should fix it, right?
I agree. I agree. I just need direction from the commission. Here's the assistant town attorney, and if you say, Susan, we want to make sure that loophole's closed, it's closed. We'll bring it back to y'all at the next meeting.
And that, to me, that's not a state issue. If we decide that, you know, pavers
Right.
are not permeable surface.
That's
we
up to
change it.
us. Now, the other issue too, I don't want everybody to misunderstand that's listening tonight, is that the state isn't saying you can freely go down and cut any tree you want. They're saying there's a process that you have to follow with having an arborist certify that that's a dangerous tree, and then you can take it down. But I don't want there to be a misconception. And I know we're all dealing with our emotions here, and I just want to make sure that we're not sending the wrong message to people that would adversely affect us.
Commissioner Brill.
To let you know how the state got this law, there was, at one point in time, a senator who lived on the West Coast, no names, and he went to town on the trees. And the town came down on him for it, and he said, well, you know, okay, no problem, I'll just have the law changed. And so he went back to Tallahassee, and he got the law changed. Legislators didn't let it go the way he wanted to go because of the arborist situation, but he wanted it to cut any tree down. That same, just to show you how they think and how they come up with these things, he wanted to buy a property on the East Coast so he could use it as a rental. Well, the town that he was trying to buy it in, and he told them, I want a rental, they told him, no good. You're not allowed to rent any properties here in this town. So he went back to Tallahassee, and he had the law changed. And that's how you got the rental. That's how you got the rental law.
Short-term rental stuff?
Yep.
Oh, my
That's
God.
where that all came from. Okay, just to show you how they think and how these things happen. I mean, this guy took it personal, and he went to the extent, okay? But, you know, not saying they all do it. They don't, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that happened in this instance.
Good point. That's the problem. I agree with you 100%.
And one more thing, give credit to Commissioner Burrell, at the
You need to
time.
speak into the
Oh,
mic.
no, I just got, I'm sorry. Give credit to Commissioner Burrell. I was in the meeting, I remember back then, I was sitting there at the time, and he fought to make sure that Sewell's Point had something against Airbnb, and we got grandfathered in. So when they changed the law, we are grandfathered. Nobody else can do an Airbnb here or anything else for short-term rentals. Thank you. And the other thing I was going to mention, Joe, coming up on that house that we're talking about in Oakwood, please make sure that water is maintained. So I guess you have to sign off on the water that's being held on the property. now? It goes, has to be signed off by an engineer, am I correct?
He reviews the plans before the construction begins. We didn't have that ordinance in place when this property came under construction.
Oh, boy.
But they do have to retain the water on their property to that equation that we have, and I don't have it here in front of me, but there is a mathematical equation on how much water they have to retain on their property.
Can we even have an engineer check this, just to make sure, because this is gonna have precision, because there's such little property there. I don't see how I walk by the property, and I'm like, where the heck are they gonna hold this water? I don't see it. Is it like a pond back there? It's ready to be a pond? Great. That's what it would take. So I didn't see the back.
The whole length of the back,
Okay. I just don't want to see all the neighbors get flooded over there, because the way the front is, it's like everything's getting pitched out to, it should be pitched out to the back. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, I had pressed my button before. I was just going to clarify the two separate ordinances. They were kind of getting conflated a little bit. The pervious impervious is a separate ordinance than the tree ordinance.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time on the tree ordinance. I feel like that is good. I spent a lot of time on that, thinking about it, trying to get all the details. So we really spent a lot of time on that. Unfortunately, I think those things can fall through the cracks sometimes, but overall, I think the town is doing a good job with the trees. That's my opinion. I'm on board with changing the impervious, pervious thing, because, yeah, I agree, the pavers do not seem like water could go through them. I'm not on board with enforcing the spirit of an ordinance, because that's not really our job, and that's heavy-handed government to be like, well, this is what I think it should be like. That's why we have the laws, so that you can have legal people interpret them, and that's what you enforce. We can't be enforcing the spirit, because everybody's spirit could be slightly different. And then I also, the whole state issue with the trees, if anything, we should be encouraging people to talk to their state legislators to get the law changed, as opposed to us trying to fight it. Because when it comes to the state versus Sewell's Point, we're not going to win. We're just going to end up getting students, spending money, which we don't want to do. You were talking about that earlier. So I think it's important to try to get the law changed, us talking to our legislators, people talking to the legislators. I mean, we know them. They go and they make those laws and they have votes. So I think that's a much better route than trying to fight it from here. That's what I'm
They're
thinking.
not going to waste money on attorneys to fight not cutting down a tree.
No, but somebody would sue us because we fought them on,
It would cost them money to do that.
I don't know, people get a little crazy.
Well, we lose that one.
I don't agree.
Commissioner Brill?
Quick comment on talking to the legislators. I've been up in Tallahassee, and I've talked my lungs out to them about issues, and I don't know how many times I traveled up there and how many offices I visit. And every time I go into one to explain, just like you want us to, they basically say, well, I agree with what you're saying, but I have to vote along party lines, I'm sorry. That's the attitude that they have up there at this point in time. I mean, so I agree, I would talk to John Snyder, I would talk to Toby, I would talk to whoever it is you need to talk to, but I just don't see it getting very far because they don't.
It was more like a idea in an ideal situation. This is how America works. They're your representatives. You tell them how you feel, and they're supposed to represent you. But I'm not saying it always works, because I agree. They have their own agendas. I just don't like the idea of putting Sewell's Point at risk for lawsuits and stuff like that. That's where I'm not going to get
You
up.
are putting Sewell's Point at risk by allowing the incorrect law to kill you by 1,000 cuts. Every guy that repeats what Tin Oakwood has done is going to turn Sewell's Point into South Florida and Port St. Lucie. That's all I'm saying. We're trying to protect our canopy. And we protect it with the spirit of the ordinance. We have ordinances to say this is what we want to do, but when somebody finds a loophole to it, and we allow them to utilize the loophole without fighting them at the risk of suffering a lawsuit, then you roll over and allow the repaving of South Sewell's Point, or Sewell's Point North as well.
I mean, I get it. I'm just for fixing the problem moving forward, not getting in fights.
Okay, that was a more spirited discussion than I expected. But that's okay.
Let's call the meeting to order now.
Any other commissioner comments? If not, It's your fault. These trees, all the leaves are going in, they're clogging up.